Hey everybody, welcome to Crackpot, the podcast where each and every week we dive into a different conspiracy theory and we discuss the merits or the demerits of each. We're your hosts. I'm Tim.
And I'm Zach.
Zach.
Yo.
You're kind of amplified about this one.
Oh, I shouldn't be, though. That's always a bad sign, isn't it?
No, it's not.
It's a good sign?
I think it's a good sign. I think, I don't know. I know so little about this, but you've been going on and on about how good it is. So
yeah, it's very compelling.
It's very weird.
And again, this is one of those too where it's like, if this is real,
yeah,
nothing makes sense anymore.
That's what I love. That's perfect.
Uh-huh. I will also say that this is a story, or I've put together the story arc of this situation.
Uh-huh.
I did my best to try to keep it simple because it does get a little bit confusing. There's names, some people change. Like, it's just like it can be a little confusing at times. So I've really tried my best to make this as clear as possible.
Okay.
So if you get lost in the details, slow me down.
Okay.
Stop me, etc.
So we're talking cryptids?
You think, right? No, this week, folks, we are talking about the Doddleston Messages. The Doddleston Messages, yep.
Okay.
That's a blank stare on your face. What's interesting is actually I had heard about this before we started the show.
Okay.
I remember hearing either a podcast episode or reading about it on the internet somewhere, somehow, I don't remember when.
Yeah.
But it was one of those where I was like, oh, that's weird. And then I had completely forgotten about it. But it's a very, very compelling story. So just to cut right to the chase here, this one took place in the 1980s.
Oh, okay. So it's not the 1880s.
We'll see. I don't know.
Okay, good. But
the main character in this story, or one of the main characters, Ken Webster, lived in Doddleston, England. And if you're going to say what happened, he received a series of messages left on his computer from somebody that appeared to be living around the time of Shakespeare. Yeah, actually, technically Henry VIII. And then also maybe somebody from the future.
What?
So it's so weird.
I'm pretty skeptical right out of the gate here.
I get that. I totally get that. But so this is one of those things where you have to be thinking about the time, the place, right? For all of this to actually work.
Sure.
So you got to turn back the clock, folks, go across the pond to 1984, the fall of 1984, the village of Doddleston, England. And Doddleston is located near the English border with Wales. So it's kind of central western England, very near Liverpool and I guess Manchester also.
Okay, sure.
But it's truly a village. It's tiny. This man named Ken Webster, okay, that's his real name, living with his girlfriend, Debbie. And then they had a friend of theirs named Nicola, who would come and stay with them from time to time. He was a buddy of Ken Webster's. The three of them were living in this place called Meadow Cottage. It was a 19th century house in the middle of this village.
Okay.
There's pictures of it. It's still there to this day.
Yeah, sounds beautiful.
Yep. Now, because the house was relatively old, actually, when they moved in, they started renovating the place.
Mm-hmm.
Huge mistake, by the way.
That's how you stir up the ghosts, right?
That's exactly right. So after they started doing some renovations, they noted like some strange paranormal activity picking up.
Okay.
So, for example, they saw six-toed footprints imprinted in the dust on the floor.
That's weird.
The footprints even seemed to walk up the walls.
No, thank you.
I know.
Jesus.
They thought, okay, so it must be a prank, obviously, no big deal. And then they go back and try to paint over those footprints, clean it up. The next day they reappear.
Okay.
So
that's no good.
Now, here's what's really funny about this conspiracy theory, or whatever you want to call it. The paranormal activity is kind of like the least of all of this.
It's like, whatever. We're not even going to focus on the footprints.
Yeah, so ordinarily this would be something to be like, what? We got to talk about those footprints. No. You'd be missing the point of the story if you're focusing on like poltergeist activity here. They also noticed around this time that they were doing work on the house. Like, the house started to feel more drafty. They'd feel cold gusts of wind in the house.
Okay. Well, hey, they're doing work on a house. I mean, who's to say?
That's right. The windows cracked open, or they're replacing it or something. Yeah, that makes sense. They'd also observe shadow figures.
Okay.
Felt an ominous presence. You know, the usual.
The usual.
They'd also find, get this, the tins of cat food arranged in pyramids, like neatly stacked. And none of them did it. They're like, what?
That's so weird. What's this dude living with them for? What's that all about?
Comes and goes.
Okay.
A buddy. Maybe
Just
that's a podcast.
The Kato Kalin of the group.
Yeah, right.
So is he playing pranks on him? Is he a trickster?
He swears to this day, no.
Okay.
So, gotta believe him.
All right.
I believe him. All right. So, as we discussed, of course, you mess with the house, especially an old one, you're going to be drumming up some spirits, obviously. But let's get back to Ken Webster. So, Ken, our main man, was a teacher at a nearby secondary school. Now, again, remember, this is the mid-'80s, right? And because the time being the 80s, personal computers were actually like completely brand new.
Oh, definitely.
Which I know it sounds obvious, but I mean, you have to actually remember that fact. Like, we're talking the 1980s. And it turns out, this is very interesting also, there was a major push by the British government in the 80s with the British Broadcasting Corporation to get people familiar with computers. So the BBC worked with a computer company called Acorn to build and distribute very simple personal computers to schools.
Sure.
So Acorn, if you think about it, it's like, it looks like a glorified keyboard. You know, it's almost like, if you think about the Apple I, like a crappier version of that.
Yeah. No, I get it. Yeah.
So it's very much first gen. But these computers actually had programs. They had like word programs where you could type. Mm-hmm. They also had computer games, math games, that kind of stuff.
Sure,
like it's you obviously, like you think the 1980s and computers, that's what it was. And also these computers were expandable with different chips. You could put different components with it. You could expand the features. So it was, you know, despite it being old, actually a relatively functional computer. But I know it's obvious again, but it's important. There was no network. There was no internet. There was nothing to plug these computers into at all. Like, they were standalone devices.
Yep.
Don't forget that. Ken, teacher at a secondary school. His school, as part of this program, has now a surplus of some of these computers.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah, so they're letting the teachers
probably takes it home.
Take it home over the weekend.
Totally.
Get familiar with it. You know, you got to figure out how these computers work. He starts checking it out over the weekend, taking it back to his house, and he also would leave it out for his roommate, Nicola, or buddy, to use. Mm-hmm. And there was a program, it was called Edward, EDWORD,
okay,
which was a word processing program.
Makes
so
sense.
Nicola would sometimes use that. He was like an aspiring comedian or whatever, and all this other stuff, and would write papers on there and such. But anyways, they'd come back, you know, he'd work on it, and then Ken at one point had the computer for a few days, leaves the house, nobody else home, comes back. The computer program Edward is left open, and this is what was left on the screen. True are the nightmares of a person that fears. Safe are the bodies of the silent world. Turn, pretty flower, turn towards the sun, for you shall grow and sow. But the flower reaches too high and withers in the burning light. Get out your bricks. Pussycat, pussycat went to London to seek fame and fortune. Faith must not be lost, for this shall be your redeemer.
Okay.
Isn't that creepy?
It's
weird.
It's weird.
It's just weird. It doesn't make any sense.
It's a weird little poem, kind of out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He has no idea. Like, he assumes, okay, yeah, Nick's playing a joke.
Yeah.
Maybe his girlfriend Debbie is. Maybe it's like left over on the computer.
Yeah, part of the program or something.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Okay.
So just like, that's weird.
And to be clear, it's just like on the screen, basically.
It's just on the screen. So imagine walking into your home. And the computer for the house, like we all used to have, was like the one computer sitting there in the family room or whatever. It's like on with that displayed. So he showed his girlfriend. She's like, what? what? Nick's like, but
Yeah.
and nobody takes credit for it.
Yeah.
They assumed, okay, maybe it's a prank, right? It's an old house. Maybe somebody came in, typed on it quickly,
sure.
or a friend or something stopped by.
It's a weird prank, but
And
okay.
that was it. So you think, okay, that makes sense. Cool. We're good. A few more days pass. Similar type of situation. Ken goes to the computer to find another message written on it, and this one, albeit quite a bit different from the last. This is where I will apologize over and over again. So I will read what is written, but you'll notice it's like Shakespearean English.
Oh, okay.
It's not Old English. It's pre-modern English. Because, you can kind of make sense of it. Old English is like a different language. But anyways, this is what he finds on the screen, and I'll read it. I don't know. Just tell me what you think. I read on behalf of many, what strange words thou speak, although I must confess that I hath also been ill-schooled. Sometimes methinks alterations are somewhat barful, for they break man asleep in mine bed. Thou art goodly man, who hath fanciful woman, who dwell in mine home. I hath no want to affray, for only Sith, mine half-witted antic, has ripped at Wayne mine hound, hath I been wreathed the night. So I guess what he was saying was, I hath seen many alterations, lastly, charge house and thou home, 'tis a fitting place, with lights which devil maketh, and costly things, that only mine friend Edmund Gray can afford, or the king himself. 'Twas a great crime to hath bribed mine house. So I guess if you're going to say, like, what's going on here, there's a message from the Shakespearean times, which sounds like basically a spirit talking in the language of the time, saying, hey, you stole my house, buddy.
Yeah.
He's saying, you speak a strange language, but, hey, I'm not the world's most educated person. Then he said, you sleep in my bed. You have a woman who's living in my house. Also, you've changed my house. It was a fitting place. You have this light thing that clearly the devil makes. And, it was a crime for you to steal my house.
Wow. That's creepy.
It almost makes you think like The Sixth Sense, like Bruce Willis, like.
Yeah.
There's a spirit there who sees somebody just like living in his space.
My God. So if it's real, that's really freaky.
I know.
If it's not, it's also equally terrifying, because like someone is going into his house and writing super bizarre messages in Old English. Like, what's up with that?
That's right, dude. That's right. So actually,
Like,
it's kind of a lose-lose here.
Yeah, nothing's good, man.
Unless it's a hoax, right, or a prank.
Well, okay, sure.
Ruling that out, though.
Like
You're right.
Ken or Nick or his friend, what was her name? Lisa?
Debbie.
Debbie, yeah. Like, okay. Yeah, they are still prime suspects in my mind, but I'm going with the story. And if you rule them out, either scenario is equally terrifying.
I think you're right, though, too. Yeah, somebody's either sneaking in or ghosts are real.
Right, and they learned how to type on a computer.
Yeah. So, once again, Ken, Nick, Debbie, they see this, they pass it off as a prank. Like, okay, this is clearly a joke or something's going on.
Yeah.
Ken goes back to school, right? He's bringing the computer back. And like in the teacher's lounge or around lunch or something, he's talking with some of the other teachers and just talking about this strange situation that's happening. And everybody's like, okay, this is clearly a joke. Obviously, it's a prank.
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
Except for one teacher there by the name of Peter Trinder. He was actually an English teacher. And he was the first one to say, this is clearly like Shakespearean style prose, right? It matches something from the 16th century, maybe 17th.
Okay.
And then he's the one that tells Ken to write back.
Okay. All right.
So he does. So Ken then goes back, brings, checks out the next weekend or whatever, a computer, brings it back to his house, sets it up, and writes a message. I won't quote the whole thing because there's a lot of text here. But in short, he said, hey, look, I'm sorry for stealing your home. He explains who he is, what year it is, and then starts asking this entity. And I'll say, I forgot to mention this, I'm sorry, but the last quote, the one in like Old English or Shakespearean English, was signed by the initials LW.
LW.
Yep.
Okay.
So, like I said, Ken's apologizing to LW for stealing the house, et cetera, and then says, hey, it's 1984, 1985 right now. Who are you? What's the deal?
Yeah.
And then he just leaves it on his computer. He goes to the pub with his friends, comes back, and if you think this story is weird, it only gets weirder. Here we go.
At what point do you stop going back to your house? Just be like, you know what? No.
At this point now, I would never leave. Like, listen to this. So he comes back from the pub, and he sees the message on his computer, like a response to the previous note that he had left. It said, "You said your time be 1985. Me thought you were alls from 2109, like your friend whom didst bring Leams boist pray." Leams boist pray, we learn later, is what he calls the computer, like it's some sort of words for like a like lighted box or something.
Okay.
So, whoa.
I thought you were from 2109. 09?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So this is weird. So Ken is saying, "Hey, it's me. I'm from 1985." This LW is like, "Wait, I thought you were from 2109. What's the deal?" We suddenly have 3 timelines.
Oh my God.
So we have, I'll say what's been revealed through some communication is that this LW appears to be living during the time of Henry VIII.
Okay.
Fair enough. So we
and
have
what year is that roughly?
1540s.
Okay.
So we have the 1540s, we have 1985, and evidently somebody from the year 2109.
Wow.
Now Ken's just like, I'm sorry, what? Now what's going on?
I'm going back to the pub.
So then he's like, what do I do? And he has the idea to just leave another message.
Okay, sure.
And it literally just says, calling 2109.
That was it.
That's it.
Okay. Yeah, short to the point.
Makes total sense. Let's not get too crazy, right? So then he leaves that message. It comes, goes away for a while, comes back, finds this on the screen. It says, "Try to understand that you 3 have a purpose that shall in your lifetime change the face of history. We, 2109, must not affect your thoughts directly, but give you some sort of guidance that'll allow room for your own destiny. All we can say is that we are all part of the same God. Whatever he is, ? Is." That's what Ken Webster comes home to.
That's straight up time traveler talk. Like, that is exactly what a time traveler would say.
It sounds like it, right? Textbook.
Okay.
Textbook time traveler.
Okay. So you're going to do, but did he say we 3 or you 3?
That's what's confusing. He says, you 3.
You 3. Now, does that mean like the 3 that live in the house? Nick, Ken, and
it could be
Deb?
Yeah, it could be. Or it could be LW
and Nick, or Ken.
And then maybe 20. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. What?
It's all open to interpretation. There's no answer. Like, you're not going to.
You
don't know. Yeah.
Okay.
So then it keeps going and gets more weird, but to kind of keep things simple here, remember, you've got 3 different times, right? Maybe 3 different dimensions. Right. There you have LW, who's in the 1540s, Ken Webster in the 80s, and then somebody from 2109. It turns out over a series of more and more communications, like I'm not going to be able to read everything.
Yeah.
But what it turns out that LW actually gradually reveals himself to be somebody by the name of Lucas Wainman, living in a house on the site of this meadow cottage where their 3 are living.
Totally.
And he said this was during Henry VIII's marriage to Catherine Parr, so between 1543 and 1547. And the other thing that kind of pops here is that LW then starts to relay more about himself. So it turns out, as I said, LW lived on this site of this meadow cottage and was raising livestock on the land around the house. He'd been married with a son. His wife and child had died during the plague in 1517. He'd studied at Brasenose College at Oxford. And and this is where like things get confusing a little bit again.
Okay.
So Webster stops hearing from LW.
Okay.
Those messages in like Shakespearean English just kind of stop. And then they start reappearing again, except for this time we learn that it's a different character, that LW has actually been arrested and is being held by the local sheriff, Sir Thomas Fowlshurst, due to communications with the lightbox.
What? What?
It's also revealed at this time that, LW, so Lucas Wainman, is actually a pseudonym. And in fact, LW's name really is Thomas Hardin.
Okay.
So what was happening was, I guess, LW was just as perplexed by the future people he was talking to as everybody else.
Yeah.
He didn't feel comfortable, so he was using a pseudonym to kind of hide his identity.
Okay.
If you're going to believe that, right?
Sure.
So now what's weird is I'll stop calling him LW.
Yeah.
I'll call him Thomas Hardin because that's his apparently real actual name.
But he got arrested.
Correct.
And now the constable is communicating with?
Apparently a friend of Thomas.
Okay.
Yep, it was the constable that was holding Thomas.
Got it.
And for talking to this light box or whatever, probably this devil machine, if you will.
Yeah.
So you have Thomas, you have Ken, you have 2109, and then Thomas's buddy that was kind of communicating for him. And then eventually what happens is you have Thomas that comes back from jail, evidently. But here's some communication that, just like some bizarro communication that was left by Thomas to Ken Webster. He said, "Mine godly fool, mine linkman thinketh that thou art BL in mine pan. I saith that me maketh like divine, but I know you live now. He also saith that mine blood be poisoned, and that it be in mine weak. Hinged fancy, but something. Anyways, what he's saying is, my pleasant fool, my servant thinks that you are all in my head. He says I act like a seer, but I know you live now. He also says my blood is poison, and that it's weak-hinged imagination, but I am not mad. I think, and told him so. I also said, it is the fairy gold. Keep it secret until I write a book." So this Thomas Hardin can't explain it. He's perplexed.
You know what? Like, that message is so bizarre. It doesn't seem like someone in 1985 pretending that they're from 1540 because it would have made a little bit more sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Like, you would think, it's almost like if it were more well written,
yes,
it would suggest it's less believable.
Yeah. It's almost too confusing to be a hoax.
Yeah.
Kind of.
I know what you're saying.
And not necessarily confusing, but just like the language is just so different.
It's so different. It's so weird. There was another one. This is actually my favorite quote by Thomas Hardin, if you believe it. And actually, I won't bother with the pre-modern English. But what he said, if you're going to like more or less translate or whatever, said, "I think we are a history book that has its front and back pages joined together.
Oh.
We are each a side of it."
That is too much.
That's too much, I think.
That is too much. Wow. This is really weird.
It's super weird.
I want to hear more from 2109, though.
You're going to right now.
Yes.
These ones are even more weird, dude. So what's a little bit difficult about kind of the narrative arc of this story is that, there's no, like, not all of the messages from Thomas Hardin were written down.
Okay.
So just a limited number. So I've read a few of them that I think make sense, and then we can kind of make heads or tails of. 2109, there's a lot more that's been written and been recorded.
So, like, who knows about this at this point? Sounds like the Teacher's Lounge knows about it.
That's right. And, yeah, the three of the folks in the house. And actually, throughout this time, Ken Webster started getting, like, legitimately freaked out.
Okay.
And he invited some paranormal investigators over to observe what was going on.
Yeah.
Now, this is also where, if you think about, like I said in the beginning, the paranormal stuff was also the stuff that's kind of like the the afterthought to all of this. But he was saying that he felt like whenever there were messages that were being relayed, that there was more paranormal activity in the house at the time. Totally. However, when the investigators came over to check, all activity ceased.
Okay. Yeah. Just saying that's suspicious.
I agree.
Yeah.
I know.
And it's important to remember, I know we hit you over the head with it at the beginning, but this is not hooked up to the internet.
Yeah, nobody's hacking this thing.
Right. The only way to do it is to physically go into his house.
Yeah.
And that was my question. So the messages generally show up like after he leaves and comes back? Is that it?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
It's not like instantaneous. He's not like sitting there watching the words appear.
Sure.
It's like you leave it on,
Is
come
it
back.
Overnight, like while he's sleeping?
I think it all depends. So I think in some situations it's going to run a few errands, going to the pub, maybe overnight, maybe nothing for a few days, and then it shows up, right? So it's kind of all over the board, I guess.
Wow. Okay.
So those were some of the messages that were left by Thomas Harden, right? But the stuff from 2109 is completely just messed up. All right. Here's what happened. A few of my favorite excerpts, greatest hits, if you will, of 2109. No context. All right. So first one, like, who is 2109? Okay. This is what 2109 said. Again, we give you two choices, together with some help. What is our name? Too perfect that we make mistakes, as we must have a character. Movement that casts no shadows. Thought without chemical reaction. Love without passion. Hate without anger. Wars without life lost. How can we have a name? We are many, but no more than one in the time to come. We have no retirement. What an age to be if the digits were reversed. The confusion around multiple people in the timeline. There's this question about maybe there were two LWs or two Lucases. He said, if only you had listened. At present, you have two Lucases running around your house. If at any time the two are to meet, we cannot explain the devastation that will erupt within the time continuum. We must stop communication with Lucas 1, but we cannot interfere with the other. While we decide what can be done to rectify the problem, you must help by giving us every word uttered by Thomas Harden from the second you received his true name. You must also state how much information you have on this man, everything, word for word. Avoid any other communication you may have with him. Desperation. Be quick.
What?
I know. And then my favorite one, dude, this one's just creepy. It's about time travel.
It's all about time travel.
2109 says this. Some facts accepted in our time. Number one, if a person is to physically travel in time, then they must take the living place of a person at the point of destination and vice versa. Imagine a set of scales balanced perfectly with pebbles. To remove a pebble from one dish to the other and keep this perfect balance, you must instantaneously remove a pebble from the other and place them in reverse order. You may move a couple of pebbles already in the dish, but the vital balance is still kept. If someone is brought in from another dimension, then again, the same procedure applies. Number two, matter will not, as we know, ever travel in time. This is not a contradiction to the above info. Number three, we are not in control of this experiment. Number four, Thomas is a person living in the 16th century, but unknown to him, he is not quite what he seems to be. Ken, is there a possibility that you may persuade Thomas to call up this chap, number one, tonight, as it's imperative that we speak to him immediately? There was another character that kind of came in and like orbited in and out quickly.
Yeah.
That went by the name One, like O-N-E.
Okay.
So I guess just looking at all these messages, it starts out as maybe there's a ghost communicating with Ken on his computer, right? Maybe it's a poltergeist.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, maybe not. Then suddenly it turns into, wait, somebody's living in the 1540s 40s, 50s, 60s, whatever, at the same time as Ken, at the same time as somebody from the future called 2109, presumably the year 2109.
Yeah.
And we're learning from the future that we can't disrupt the past. Time travel's possible, but matter is not.
Yeah.
That was like a whole thing I didn't quite get.
Yeah,
So
well, it's like you can travel, like your consciousness can travel.
okay, thank you. Yes, that's right. Maybe that's what it means, right?
Yeah. You just like swap places with someone else.
Right.
Okay, that's amazing. This whole thing. So what is Ken making this all up?
I mean, here are the possibilities, right?
Yeah.
Either he's making it all up,
Okay.
or Debbie, or Nick,
Right.
or a stranger who shows up,
Sneaks in and out of his house.
yeah, and writes all this nonsense. Like,
Well, it's incredibly complex, but also just loosey-goosey enough. Like, this would take a lot of planning.
in 2109, like I pulled what I thought were some of the more interesting like quotes.
Yeah.
Left a lot of like said a lot. You know, like there are a lot of quotes, but it's just it's like this where you read it and you go, it makes sense, but it doesn't make sense. But the less you think about it, the more it makes sense almost.
Right.
So I don't know. Like that it's like a straight up computer mystery.
Okay. Prime suspects. Like you said, the three in the house.
Exactly.
Absolutely. That would be the most logical explanation.
Completely.
This English teacher or history teacher?
Peter Trinder or whatever.
Yeah. I don't know, man. He's like, oh, that's weird. Try writing back. Well, let's see what happens.
That's right.
Then again, like he does have to sneak into the house to do all this stuff. So it's like, who knows? I don't know.
The only other thing I could think of, too, if it wasn't somebody sneaking around or playing a hoax, would be like somehow programming that chip
Yeah.
in advance or whatever.
Okay.
Like
So
the
like when
Edward
he goes
program.
and he plugs in his XYZ part.
Yeah. To
It
work.
just loads into it.
Yeah.
And
That was the
that's
only other thing I could think of.
I like that.
Yeah.
What about... I don't even want to say this out loud.
Yeah.
Demons lie, right?
They're said to, yes.
They are said to lie. So if we're truly going into the paranormal realm,
Yeah. Huh. Jeez.
and he's communicating with something not of this world, it doesn't have to be someone from 1540 and someone from 2109. It could just be some trickster demon that intentionally lies, right?
You could be totally right. It could be one entity masquerading as many, right?
Yeah. But then, like, the whole underlying question, no matter what scenario you believe, why?
You know what, Tim? That's right. And here's what's also interesting. I was going to talk about this later. Like, to this day, so we know Ken Webster's name and we know Debbie, and I forgot her last name off the top of my head. They have never they've never shown their faces on any TV channel, any documentary.
Okay.
Now, Ken wrote a book called The Vertical Plane about this actual situation.
Okay.
Incredibly rare book to get your hands on. He published it in 1988 or 89, a few years after it happened. And I guess by what I understood, it's a kind of confusing and not well written.
Yeah.
Right. But he didn't profit off it like necessarily, and also he's not famous from it because even in an interview on TV that they did with him and Debbie, he and Debbie both faced away from the camera.
What's up with that? Like, what? Why?
I don't know. But so I guess what I would say is like, if this is going to be a hoax, you would do it for a reason, which is to become famous, probably.
Yeah.
Or profit off of.
Right.
Which neither apparently happened. So, because your question was why.
Why?
And I can't think of anything that.
So if someone's playing a trick, why? If these are time-traveling, keyboard-operating entities, why?
That's right.
If it's a trickster demon, I don't know. They got their own motives. I'm not going to go there. But anyway, it's like, that's the I mean, it's all confusing. It's like, what? Why?
Yeah. Well,
okay, anyway.
Yeah. And it wasn't like it was 4 messages where you could say, okay, somebody did it for a little bit and had fun. It's like,
yeah. Well, how long is this going on?
It's going on over the course of like a year and a half.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's like intermittent, right? It's not just.
It's not every single day they get a new message and write something back.
Yeah.
Man.
So these conversations continue on across all 3 of these parties, if you will. And like I said, there's a few more that kind of rotate in and out, and it gets even more confusing with different names. But more importantly, if you're reading some of these conversations amongst each other, it's clear that each party that we're talking about is trying to set traps or like understand whether the other person's real. Like
including Ken. Yeah.
Right. So it's like, tell me this, or like, what's the deal with that? Or 2109 even came out and said, okay, don't try to do that because then you won't, hear much else from us or whatever. So it's just weird.
That is so bizarre.
Eventually, the messages reveal themselves to be that Thomas Harden, was getting kicked out of his house that he's renting. And he leaves a final message wishing Ken Webster and his friends well. He tells Ken and Debbie that he's going to Bristol to buy a horse and see if he's welcome back at Brasenose. And this is kind of weird, interesting. So Thomas tells Ken that Thomas is, like the old-timey guy, is going to write a book about the events that transpired.
Okay.
Thomas says that he's writing the story of the events from his perspective, and he'll leave the book where it can be discovered in the future.
Yes. Oh, my God, yes.
2109 says that the book will be found sometime in the future point, right? Thomas is never heard from again, although Webster does find reference to him, that name at least, of becoming a vicar at the Little Barrington in Gloucestershire from 1551 to 1554. And
whoa! Don't brush that aside. They found an actual
Thomas Harden, but there's multiple spellings of the last name.
Yeah, which I don't know for sure, but that doesn't seem uncommon.
Back then, I think it was quite common.
Yeah.
To have different spellings. But it turns out that Thomas was going to write a book about the events and leave it to be discovered. No book has been discovered to this day.
Not yet. I got to get my hands on this one in 1988 or whatever. The Vertical Plane.
It's like $200 at least on Amazon. But yeah, it might be worth it actually. So then let me read you the final message from 2109.
Yeah.
It starts out actually as a reference to the very first message that Ken ever received. So some of these words will sound familiar, but then it'll change a little bit.
But this is from the future guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So this is what he says. He says, "True are the nightmares of those that fear. What you fear will be your reality if you let it. Believe in yourselves. Safe are the bodies of the silent world. As long as your kind cannot penetrate our world, we are safe. Turn, pretty flower, turn towards the sun, for you shall grow and sow, but the flower reaches too high and withers in the burning light. Knowledge will be your progress, but your kind are coming close to getting their fingers burnt. Indirectly, you may prevent this. Get out your bricks. Get ready to build. Write the book. Pussycat, Pussycat went to London to seek fame and fortune. The cat went to visit the queen, but instead frightened a little mouse under the chair. Ultimately, London will be a significant place. Stick to your main aims. It doesn't matter how hard they seem to get. Do not be distracted by that tiny mouse that has a deceiving charm. Faith must not be lost. You all rely on each other's faith. There is another person to come. They will be the help we need. You will know them when they come." Thomas did eventually write his book and soon died shortly after. He placed it in a secure place. It shouldn't take too many years to find it, though he wrote it in Latin with the help of a friend that he met at Oxford. The inscription reads, "My writes this in the hope that mine fellows will one day find this book. Then may our lands be not so distant." We will finish now. You have a lot of work to do. There is no need for you to write back as we have gone. Thank you for your cooperation. 2109.
Come on.
I know.
Really?
I know.
I don't know what to think.
I don't know either. I don't know.
I mean, it's got to be a prank, right?
Well, okay.
Tell me it's a prank, right?
I keep waiting for somebody to, like, pinch me and wake me up or whatever. It's just so weird. So, all right, let's talk a little bit further about kind of where everything went from there. So, as I said, there were some paranormal investigations.
That's right.
A lot of the activity just seemed to die down and go away.
Okay.
And then in 1996, the British program Out of This World, hosted by a woman named Carol Vorderman, was released. When she went into detail, she's like an investigative journalist and went into this. And again, as I said earlier, like Ken and Debbie are on it, but they're facing away from the camera. And they haven't done anything since to go back in the spotlight. What that actual investigation revealed was this Carol Vorderman spoke with a Dr. Laura Wright of Cambridge University, like the Cambridge University. And she's a professor of English literature. And she was saying that the verb structure that Lucas or Tom or LW, whatever you want to call the Shakespearean person, the verb structure that he made were not used in a manner that was consistent with people at that time.
Okay.
Asked whether it could be a hoax, Dr. Wright stated unequivocally, if it's meant to look like early modern English writing, it doesn't even look close.
Okay.
Webster's feeble repost was that any academic wanting to keep his or her position would not say this is real. So he's like,
sure. Okay, sure.
Fair enough, right?
The person from Cambridge isn't going to say that there's a time traveler inside my computer.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
But then, okay, so then this Dr. Wright does a little bit further analysis, and she studied Ken Webster's writing and that of Lucas's or Thomas, whatever you want to call him at this point.
Yeah.
And found that there was almost identical frequency between Lucas's messages and Webster's descriptive passages. So apparently 26% of the frequency of the sample of the writing resembled Ken Webster's. So, like, in other words...
Okay, maybe he's still prime suspect.
But see, for me, it's like English operates in a certain manner. Like you're essentially the adjectives will come in front of nouns. Like there's a formula to the language. So, I mean, I like to think Dr. Wright is smart enough to kind of plan around that. But I would say like sentence structure universally follows a lot of the same form, right?
Yeah.
So to me, I don't take that as like the smoking gun. But Ken Webster categorically denied any involvement in the messages from any of the parties.
But to be fair, if he's trying to pull a giant prank on everyone, yeah, of course he's going to deny it.
That's right.
It's rather unsatisfying.
It is. Now, this investigative reporter said she had worked with some other investigators and gone back and looked at some of the paranormal, studies and, the investigations. And she was saying, like, it's a bit odd that, the writing's not consistent. Also, a lot of the paranormal activity died down when investigators were there. But she said, even if it is a hoax, I have no idea how this would have been done. All of it, right? So it's just very confusing. I'll finish with the last message from Thomas, because I don't think I've told this one yet or haven't read this one yet. And I'll leave you with a little something to think about. And he said, "It's good to know that all will change, and there are true men to follow like Ken and Peter." Peter was like another character that showed up. Though 400 years is a long time and there's much to happen to mankind. It's sad that men must learn righteousness from their ugly ways.
It's rather profound.
It is. So, like, that's the problem, I think.
Yeah.
The statements by Thomas Harden.
Yeah.
By 2109.
Yeah.
Are so out there.
Yeah.
But also some of it sounds like profound and perhaps insightful.
Yeah.
Almost like, I wouldn't say like a prophecy, but like you have to kind of let it wash over you when you hear these words.
Yeah. Now, I want to back up here for a second because the dude in the past, L.W. Thomas.
Yeah.
He was locked up for a period of time.
Yep.
For communicating on a devil box?
Pretty much, yeah.
So, like, walk me through that. Like he.
Right. So here's the takeaway.
That's a rather odd implication.
You would think so. If he was arrested for communicating with like this lighted devil box,
don't you think they would have taken that box away and like
right
burned it or something?
Right, or at least made a record of it or something that you think you could go back to those years and perhaps find. Although I guess 600 years ago at this point now, maybe not. I don't know. It is just.
But okay, so I mean, if you believe that, like, how does he have a box? Like, how does he have a computer?
That I couldn't make heads or tails to that either. Like, did it just show up one day when Ken brought it home and somehow
it's just like on his kitchen table?
Right. That's what I don't get either.
Is it like is it the spirit of the computer?
Right.
Like, what is that?
Right. Unless, and this is where it's just you got to go totally galaxy brain. Like thinking back, we're all on.
Yeah.
A piece of paper.
Yeah, front and back.
Maybe by bringing that computer home, something was disturbed and it was in two places at once. I don't know.
I would have just been like, okay, guys, we're going to stop using the computer. I'm putting a pen and paper out here. Let's just all write down our thoughts with pen and paper.
That's a really good idea.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. There was a point in time when Ken did leave out some paper and some charcoal to be written on.
Yeah.
Nothing,
no one did it.
Yeah. And even 2109 came back and said, "Don't try that. Don't play any tricks.
Don't do those games.
Yeah,
buddy. Come on."
So
Jesus.
It's so dissatisfying because it's so messed up. If any of it's real, the implications are mind-boggling.
Right. Here's the thing. I don't want to believe it. Like, it's just so fantastical. Like, there's no reason for me to believe this, but I cannot point to one single thing and say, that's why I don't believe it.
Yeah, I know. I guess the vagueness and the weirdness of the messages, you could say, well, okay, if I'm going to talk to somebody, like if messages showed up on my computer right now. And it's some dude from the 1500s or whatever, I would be very clear and direct. I wouldn't be talking, and vice versa, I would like to think, right? Like, I would expect there to be like, hey, look, this is the year it is. This is my name. This is my story. This is the deal. I wouldn't be communicating.
Writing some poetry about a flower that grows too high.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. Like, to me, that makes
nursery rhyme. Like, come on.
Yeah. To me, that makes it almost like sound a little bit like a hoax because it's intentionally ambiguous.
It just has that story-like quality. But it also lacks the story-like plot.
Totally.
It's like if you're going to prank it, like be a John Titor, you know?
There you go.
Have a cool story where you got to travel back and get a computer and you got a Jeep and you're driving to Florida or whatever that was.
Completely.
It's like that's cool, man. Like I can picture that Steven Spielberg movie, you know, like anything. But with this, everyone's just stupidly vague.
That's right. That is exactly right. And is that because they don't trust each other?
Right.
Or is that just how they talk?
Well, I mean, the only person that seemed to believe that everyone else was real was like 2109. He's like, all right, folks, listen up. You
Completely.
Stop messing with that. You got some predestined thing in front of you.
Yeah.
Stop messing this. Let's just do it.
Dude, that's exactly right.
Because the other two are like, what doth my eyes seeth?
And I mean, 2109 is playing like that, playing the lead and saying like this stuff all comes true. This is all real. Because like, presumably
don't
they
worry,
know.
stop messing around. Just stick to the script.
But it is just, this whole thing is just so weird. And the story itself is confusing, but at the end of the day, it's just a bunch of strange messages showing up on a computer.
Just a bunch of strange messages back and forth on an old computer not connected to the internet.
Mm-hmm. If it's not a hoax, then what could it be? Time is a flat circle, right?
Yeah, and the fact that they never showed their faces, I don't know what to make of that. I don't know is it... You know, they don't want to like be called out the next time they go to the grocery store. Be like, oh, you're that weirdo that says this.
Well, they live in a village of like probably 30 people,
right.
So I could imagine that being a pretty decent incentive. But you're right though. That's like weird.
It is weird. So I don't know what to make of it, man. Okay, so percentage of believability.
I hate this part of it. I hate it because It's all or nothing. It is all or nothing.
Yeah.
You either got to be 110 or 0 because the story doesn't make any sense. And then it makes even less sense if you're like, well, 50%. Like, it's either all or nothing here, man.
It doesn't have to be. You can...
Well, you splice it up for me then.
Okay. I'm saying like... God, this is awful. You're right. Okay, no. I'm just going to jump in.
Yeah, embrace it.
I'm going to say 33%. Like, maybe it's real. There's a very large percentage of me that's like, that's crazy. But
I know, dude. I know.
But it's not 1%. It's not 0. Like, it's just weird enough. Like, spirits, apparitions, like all that sort of stuff. It's like you start peeling that onion and who knows where it goes.
That's right, man.
So that's as high as I'm going to go. 33%. Maybe there were time travelers talking on a computer to some dude in rural England.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's me. Where are you at?
I hate this so much, dude. I actually liked how you walked that line. And I'll tell you, it doesn't help that I did the research because it doesn't make any more
help,
sense.
yeah.
It's just like, okay. So I'll go back on what I said earlier, which is I said it has to be 100% or 0. I really want to say 50-50.
Yeah.
Honestly, because like I actually could believe this is real.
Yeah.
I
know you could.
Which is weird. Which is weird. But they're just, I think there are inconsistencies in the story. Like just, it is confusing. There's different timelines, different names. You have 3 people staying in a house.
Yeah.
Investigators come over.
Everything stops.
Yeah. But then, then after all these messages stopped, then nothing else. And like nobody really profited off of it. So that's why like I could be convinced it's real. I could just as easily be told that it's a hoax.
Yeah.
And I would be like, yeah, I guess so. I don't like that feeling.
That sounds like 50-50 to me.
It really actually is, I will say.
Wow.
So, I don't know, dude.
This is up there, man. This is up there in the absolute bizarrest things we've talked about.
I completely agree with you.
Without a doubt.
It completely, absolutely is.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you like this, we got a lot of other shows on our Patreon feed, so head on over there. What's the website?
Patreon.com/crackpotpodcast.
Check it out. $3 a month gets you everything. Lots and lots, hundreds of shows. But if you can, rate, review, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell your local computer programmer about our podcast, and we will see you next week.
Thanks, everybody.